This season of Killers, Cults and Queens is sponsored by RuPaul's Drag Race Match Queen. Solve puzzles, unlock fashions, and snatch that crown. Download from the App Store. This episode contains upsetting topics and is not suitable for anyone under the age of 18. Please proceed with caution.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Nikki Druce.
And this is Killers, Cults and Queens.
The podcast where we journey to the spookiest, scariest, and downright weirdest corners of the world.
Today, we're settling in for a nice, quiet night in front of the telly, but for millions, it would turn out to be trauma-inducing. We're exploring the terrifying world of Ghostwatch.
I think we're in safe hands here. Nothing scary's going to happen.
You will rewind in 7 days.
7 days.
Judith, I'm scared. If Parkinson was taking it seriously, then so should you. Well, it's not a ghost hunt. It's a witch hunt. Are you ready?
Well, I've got my bucket of popcorn ready, and let's go.
Imagine sitting down for a nice quiet night in front of the telly when a new TV show starts. Something seems a little different. A beloved and trusted TV presenter explains there will be a live paranormal investigation happening right on your screen. But when the ghosts seem to start crossing over into people's living rooms, the scars would stay with them for life. Welcome to Killers, Cults and Queens. But before we dive into today's case, how are you doing, Nikki?
Doing really well, thank you. My week has been pretty busy, but pretty good. And I am really looking forward to today's episode.
Me too. And I know this is your bread and butter.
I'm just going to start off with a humble brag, but this is my most popular video that I ever did on YouTube, is me reacting to Ghostwatch.
No, brag away, baby. That's an accolade.
So I think 2019 is when I first watched Ghostwatch, and I had been putting it off for such a long time. And then ever since having watched it, I absolutely adore it. I think it is fantastic, and so much so that I've even got the t-shirt on today.
She's repping the merch. She's doing it all.
Yeah. So what about you, Shez? Have you ever heard of this before? Because this was before your time, really, wasn't it?
Well, it was only a year before my time. I would say about 350 days before my time.
Not to be specific.
Not to be specific, and I'm probably very wrong. But yeah, it's one of those things that's always been floating around that people have spoken about because it was such a pivotal moment during the 90s for television. And we'll get into the nitty-gritty of why it was so pivotal, but it was something that has obviously become a very cult thing. And you know we love the niche and the cult on this podcast. I mean, the clue's in the title of this show.
Yes, it is somewhat, isn't it?
But I think let's dive in the deep end, far from the shallow now, and let's set the scene. It's a crisp evening on the 31st of October 1992. In many households across the UK, they're already well settled into their evening routine. It's a Saturday, so many families allow their children to stay up a little bit later, and it's Halloween, of course, so many are looking forward to watching something a little bit spooky. As they flick between just 4 channels, something catches many people's eyes on BBC One, a programme hosted by beloved TV presenter Michael Parkinson. He's introducing that tonight is a one-off special. He and a team of outside broadcasters will be carrying out a live investigation into a haunted house. A normal suburban house has been plagued with ghostly goings-on, and it'll all be a little bit of fun to see if they can capture a ghost on camera. But what ensues over the next 90 minutes would turn out to be one of the most terrifying and complained about programmes in the whole of BBC history, and would sadly even lead to a real-life death. But what went so badly wrong with a simple TV show that it ended up traumatizing a nation? Let's find out.
So I obviously loved Ghostwatch, so I know exactly what happens. But from the get-go, I can just imagine people settling down for the evening, getting really excited about watching this show that's been advertised for weeks leading up to Halloween night, and just being excited about watching it and settling down as a family to enjoy it as well as a little bit of spooky something. But I really don't think people knew exactly what they were letting themselves in for.
See, they didn't read the fine print, and that's okay because I never read the fine print. But I think you just take everything with a pinch of salt on the telly welly. But I love TV time with a group of people, don't you?
I haven't actually done TV time with a group of people for quite a while, but yeah, we used to watch all sorts of stuff, me and my group of friends back in the day, but life happens and you all move in different directions. So yeah, we're not close
Yeah.
enough to have TV time together, but maybe I should bring it back. But we used to watch things like Coach Trip and all of that sort of fun stuff as the episodes came out, and we used to have great time.
You know how people join together in a sports bar to watch the footy? I want to join together and watch Big Brother with people, you know?
Yeah, well, people get together to watch Drag Race, don't they?
Hello, I've done my fair share of viewing parties and I will be doing some right now.
This really is our viewing party, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But to begin today's story, let's head back to 9:28 p.m. on the 31st of October 1992 when the announcer came on BBC One to announce a new TV show. They introduced the program by saying, "Now on BBC One, Screen One presents an unusual and sometimes disturbing film marking Halloween. Over the centuries, there have been countless reports of ghosts and ghouls, but the line between fact and fiction has always been unclear. Using the modern idiom of the outside broadcast, Michael Parkinson, Sarah Green, Mike Smith, and Craig Charles star in Ghostwatch."
Well, that was perfect. I'm going to give you the announcer job right now.
Hey, I need a gig. So inside many homes across the length and breadth of the UK, around 11 million people tuned in to watch the show. The reason the viewing figures were so high? Well, this was in a day and age before people's attention spans were split and streaming services became king. And quite frankly, you didn't need a 30-second clip on TikTok to hold your attention. What unfolded over the next 90 minutes would be likened to something akin to the War of the Worlds hoax and resulted in over 30,000 complaints. But why? What was so scary about a Halloween show made to scare you? Well, for many, they believed it to be entirely real. So, on the evening of this broadcast, the announcement I just read, accompanied with a TV listing in the good old Radio Times and other listing columns, did point out that this was in fact a drama, a film made especially for Screen One, the BBC's experimental drama production unit. So, for unsuspecting viewers who missed both of these pretty small warnings, the show could have come across as real. Now, many people did realize straight away that this was indeed a fun new take of the newfangled outside broadcast, which hadn't been around for long, but for others, they believed this was entirely real. Now, we're not going to go step by step through exactly everything that happened in Ghostwatch, as it is out there to find and watch for yourselves. And we highly encourage you to go and do so because it is a genuinely fantastic piece of camp TV history. But we'll give you an overview of the events that unfolded. So, as we said, the show starts off with Michael Parkinson inside a studio explaining to the viewer what would be happening throughout the course of the show. It would be a live investigation into a haunted house. Parky, as he was known, was a hugely popular TV presenter, a darling of the BBC and a trusted face on the screens of millions on a regular basis. So if Parky was presented this, it had to be legit, right?
Well, yeah, you would really trust Parky with your life. He was on the TV all the time. He was interviewing so many famous people, and he really was a bastion of the BBC at this point. And you couldn't get anyone more trustworthy on your telly than old Parky.
I have to say, they were very smart to include our darling Parky. Now, Parky explained how they would be conducting a very real, very serious live investigation of a haunted house in Foxhill Drive, Northolt, West London. However, from the get-go, this was a sign that the show was telling fibs, as the address doesn't exist. But in a day and age before a quick Google search was instantly available, no one was able to pull out the A to Z of London to see if this was a real place. Well, unless road mapping was a hobby of theirs. To make things seem as legit and plausible as possible, Ghostwatch featured some of Britain's most trusted TV personalities. As well as Michael Parkinson in the studio, there was also beloved TV presenter Sarah Green, who was reporting from the house, and Mike Smith, Sarah's real-life husband, who was hosting the telephone switchboard element of the show, where people could call in, or so they thought. There was even a young, cheeky Craig Charles, aka Lister from Red Dwarf, being the roving outside reporter interviewing the gathering crowd in the street, and his off-the-cuff remarks and banter with the crowd was impeccably real. So with this top-tier talent hosting the show, it immediately lent the whole thing of an air of authenticity. If Parkinson was taking it seriously, then so should you.
It feels like if Parkinson takes anything seriously, then you have to. It's the rules. It's the law.
Section 14, paragraph 3, Parkinson says, if it's serious, you take it serious.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So then came the investigation part. As the night unfolded, the so-called live broadcast followed the story of a mother and her two daughters plagued by a violent poltergeist they'd nicknamed Pipes, because they originally thought the strange bangs and clatters were coming from the plumbing, of course. And do we remember what poltergeist means, studio audience?
Noisy ghosts.
That's right! Noisy ghost! Well done, studio audience! So from the get-go, this promised to be scary, even if you didn't think it was real. Sarah Green seems nervous as she enters the house, but after chatting with the family, things seem relatively calm. However, just before this, some footage is shown to the audience which shows a terrifying haunting happening in the girl's bedroom, captured only a few days earlier. Banging can be heard, light bulb smashes, and it seems as if one of the girls is thrown across the room. It's enough to make hairs prickle on your arm just at the thought of it. And I'm feeling tingly just at the thought of it as well.
It is really spooky, that first bit. When somebody says, oh, we're going to go and investigate a haunted house, you think, oh, well, not very much is going to happen. And straight off, they already set the tone of this. This is going to be bad. This is going to be scary. These are the things that we've captured a few days beforehand. And you can tell that it's going to be sinister. Something spooky is about to happen.
As the live show unfolded, things amped up with unbelievable escalation. People questioned shadowy figures they saw in the background. We learned the horrifying story of a man who used to live in the home and how he may be able to talk through the children using incredibly unsettling voices. Viewers saw scratches appearing on the girls and them acting as if they were possessed. Temperature drops were noted, objects moved by themselves, all classic hallmarks of the Enfield poltergeist case, which the drama was heavily inspired by. Sounds familiar, doesn't it, Nikki?
I think we already covered all of this, didn't we?
Well, should we flash back 7 days? You will rewind in 7 days.
7 days. But this time we won't be encountering the video from The Ring. This time it is a fast montage of the Enfield poltergeist case.
The tensions throughout the show built slowly but relentlessly, and it seemed you were never quite sure if you'd seen something or not, much like many real-life ghost stories. Viewers were invited to phone in with their own sightings to a number given on screen, and a real lifeline was set up to field calls, giving the illusion that this was happening in real time. And then things started to spiral out of control. In the house, Sarah Green descends into a sealed-off under-stairs cupboard, Pipes lair. But it seems all is suddenly calm in the house. But it turns out to be a repeated picture from earlier in the evening. And in the studio, it seems that nowhere is safe, as Pipes has crossed over into the broadcasting equipment, infecting the very TVs people were watching with a violent spirit. Lights flicker and smash in the studio, equipment fails, and Michael Parkinson begins acting as though he's possessed. And then the show just stops, just cuts dead, and people sat there in stunned silence as the credits then rolled. Interestingly enough, you see the name Guy Lyon Playfair pop up as the paranormal consultant, one of the real life Enfield hauntings investigators. So by the time the credits rolled, Ghostwatch had completely broken the illusion of safety. It ended with the implication that Pipes has escaped through the broadcast itself, using the BBC to spread like a virus, and now he could be in your home. Many viewers believed what they had just seen was real. Some even thought Sarah Green had actually died on live television, and that ghost line lit up like the sky on bonfire night. Isn't this gaggy?
It's such an innovative way of doing something, isn't it? Because it's not as if it's just a scary thing that's happening to other people in their home. It's now that they've put a ghost in your TV that could be in your house. And I think that is the amazing thing about Ghostwatch, is that it transcends normal TV broadcasting. So now this creature has made its way into the studio, and it's now in your home through your TV, and it's giving me goosebumps just thinking about it.
Now, we've told this story on the podcast a while ago about when me and Nikki went to the War of the Worlds experience, but I can just imagine the chaos and carnage that is going on in people's houses. And when we did the War of the Worlds experience in London, we were with two fabulous divas, one called Judith and one called, we didn't get her name. And one of the women was so petrified at every possible moment during this experience. She just kept exclaiming, "Judith, I'm scared! Judith, save me!" And I can imagine her, 31st of October, 1992, with her roommate, Judith. The lights go out as they're watching this broadcast. The news isn't coming on, and they're going, "Judith, I'm scared! Pipes is coming for me!"
Maybe that's where the trauma came from for that poor lady. Maybe she watched Ghostwatch, and maybe that's what it is.
Judith's putting through PTSD to this poor diva.
Maybe, but yeah, it is such a exciting way of using the TV, isn't it? And just so clever. I just don't even know how they thought of it.
But before we scare ourselves even more, I think it's time for a coffee break. Now, I'm not going to lie, when Nikki suggested giving London Nootropics coffee a try, I was skeptical, but just over a month into my journey with this stuff, and to quote the GC, I love it. Now, you know I'm a busy girl on the go, and since starting drinking a cup of this every day, I really feel the pep in my step. I truly love all their blends, Mojo, Flow, and Zen, as they give me everything I need in my day. But I particularly love their newest product, Mush Love. They created it with the fantastic fungi people who made that incredible Netflix doc about the power of mushrooms. Mush Love has so many high quality mushroom extracts packed into it. It has become my favorite start to the day. With chaga, cordyceps, and lion's mane, it's got all the heavy hitters in there. And let me tell you, these do incredible things. Chaga is great for the immune system, so it's worth getting on before the cold season hits. Cordyceps are great for the heart health and managing stress. And lion's mane is a brain booster, which will obviously have you firing on all cylinders. So if you want to find your balance and join me in harnessing the power of mushrooms on the daily, make sure you head to londonnootropics.com and use the discount code KILLERS, that's KILLERS, for 20% off your order. Now, you know I just want the best for all of you, so give it a go and let me know how you get on. Right, let's get back to Ghostwatch. People on Halloween night in their millions had just tuned in to perhaps one of the scariest films ever made, and little did they realize the whole thing was a Halloween prank. Now, back in the day, there used to be a continuity announcer who read the intros and outros to TV shows live. Most continuity is pre-recorded nowadays, but back then it was done on the spot. Luckily, someone managed to capture just a little bit of this and they put it on YouTube, and you can tell even the TV announcer is scared shitless at what he has just watched, because the way it worked back then, They just sat and watched the TV shows and waited to say their bit afterwards. So then after Match of the Day aired, giving me PTSD because I hate football.
Me too.
But I know that was a good indicator to a lot of people that was time for bedtime. It's off. This is adult time.
I was allowed to stay up to watch Match of the Day theme tune, and we were allowed to sing along to it, and we used to sing kick goal, kick goal, kick goal, and then it was bedtime.
Match of the Day.
Sing along, everybody.
The continuity announcer then came back on to say words to the effect of, about Ghostwatch earlier. We could assure you it wasn't real. Just like they had to do after the War of the Worlds radio broadcast. Now, the switchboard was inundated with thousands of calls, and people were genuinely terrified. As we mentioned before, a large chunk of those people watching on the evening either worked it out from the start that it wasn't real, or as things started to escalate during the show, they realized this was just a bit of fun. But for others, they were left beside themselves. Over the next week or so, the BBC would receive complaints which totaled around 30,000 remarks, and the outrage was building as the papers published articles about the show. But we'll go into more into the aftermath in a little while. But firstly, what happened behind the scenes to even get this film produced in the first place? So the initial conversations around Ghostwatch began in 1988 when writer Stephen Falk pitched the idea to the BBC. However, the series looked a little different than what it ended up becoming. Originally, the idea was to have a 6-part series where a singular presenter would explore the paranormal at a haunted house, and it would be scripted. But the BBC producers didn't think that would work, so instead, Stephen pitched that they would just cut to the chase and deliver the last episode of the show, which was always going to be delivered as a live broadcast. The innovative idea excited the producers, and they thought, if this could be condensed into just a 90-minute special, then it may well be fantastic. And they weren't wrong. Now, unlike a lot of TV at the time, the show was produced by a female producer, Ruth Baumgarten, and female director, Leslie Manning. Plus, the majority of the leading cast were women, so it made a nice change and perhaps gave more of a trusting and authentic air to the piece, as it wasn't usual for women to be taking the lead in TV back then, which, why weren't they? Women produce some of the best television ever in history.
And I think to carry on from your point as well, Shez, I think women produce some of the best horror out there as well, because I think being a lady, there are terrifying things that happen. And I think you're right. It just really did give a trusting air to it, because people would think, oh, well, they won't steer me wrong. I'm going to be looked after. There's a nice mum in this piece who's going to look after me. Sarah Green's here. She looks after my kids on Saturday morning TV. I think we're in safe hands here. Nothing scary is going to happen. But little did they know it was going to get super scary.
What's that? What's that smell? Oh yeah, trauma. So as we know, the show went ahead in the unique and original format, and this was the first time something like this had been tried as a medium to dupe the audience. And I'm not going to say that this was the entire idea from the start, but the idea was to make this as authentic and believable as possible. Leslie Manning, the director, made sure the outside broadcast used a real crowd from nearby who did have some paranormal experiences of their own, or just weird things that had happened and were happy to talk on screen. In one particularly shocking scene, 2 women are heard talking about a dead dog who was found nearby. And it is, I think, the grimmest part of the show and kind of gives the game away about a certain Mr. Pipes. So we're not going to ruin that for you, but safe to say, it sounds incredibly plausible and genuine. After that, the studio receives a call which explains there was once a nefarious character living in the home and goes into his background, which gives the show an air of authenticity, as this seems like a genuine caller, and it's another goosebumps moment which leads the audience down another scary path, which is beginning to link everything together. The show also has a section in which Parky told the viewers they'd be staying on air for longer as the events that they were capturing were so remarkable. This, of course, was built into the runtime, but if you didn't look at the TV listing, you wouldn't have realised that. So once the show had been aired, it left a nation up in arms. Were millions of homes now haunted by the ghost of Mr. Pipes? Who was going to pay for all the damages that had happened in some homes? And the biggest question of all, was Sarah Green really dead? It's safe to say the general public were baying for blood, and it wouldn't be Mr. Pipes. It was time for the producers to face their public.
It's scary, isn't it? Because they've made something here that is exciting and innovative. And, you know, for the majority of people that were watching that evening, over 11 million, I think, was it?
11 million people.
Yeah, so that many people and then 30,000 complaints. That's not loads compared to the amount of people that were watching, is it?
No, not at all. And quite frankly, it sounds like a large number, but really, people complain about Love Island to that extent these days, you know?
This sounds quite scary for the producers now because it sounds like a meeting I really wouldn't want to go to. It sounds like they're about to be in a lot of trouble, aren't they?
Well, it's not a ghost hunt, it's a witch hunt. So complaints have been rolling in after the Ghostwatch broadcast on Halloween 1992. So many complaints, in fact, that BBC execs had no other option than to have somewhat of a public lynching of the producers on a show called Bite Back. But before we get into that, what precautions were taken in the run-up to this show airing? Well, there was a continuity announcer before the show saying that this was a drama. The phone number on the evening also explained when called that this was a dramatization and not a real show. The credits of the show, which showed that this was a written drama, and then also the post-credits scene announcement, which later followed, reassuring everybody that this wasn't real. However, this didn't seem like enough to those who had already been truly terrified. Now, even though so far this all seems like a good prank, serious things did happen after the broadcast, which left ripples in the homes of many. 2 children were diagnosed as having post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of watching the show, which were the first ever reported cases of a TV show doing so. Then there was the case of 18-year-old factory worker Martin Denham. Martin had mental health conditions and watched the show when it went out as supposedly live, and he believed the show to be genuine. Martin coincidentally had issues with a faulty heating system at home, which was making noises, and this caused him to become terrified in his own home, believing Mr. Pipes was responsible. Sadly, just 5 days after the show aired, Martin took his own life, and his parents held the show accountable. In the note he left behind, he wrote, "If there are ghosts, I shall be with you always as a ghost." Now, Martin did have a few psychological conditions, and we can't know for certain if Ghostwatch was the sole reason for him taking his own life, but we do know it played a factor in his experiences in the days leading up to his death.
It's really sad, isn't it? Because you have something that goes out on TV, somebody watches it, and they're not in the best frame of mind to begin with. And then something coincidentally happens in their home, and then that sets something in motion, which then sadly led to them taking their own life. It's really tragic, and it's something that is a cycle of events that I think if this was going to happen, it was going to happen some way anyway, and it's something that I'm sure the producers never thought was going to happen off the back of this at all.
We've come a long way with support for mental health as backwards as it feels in 2025, but you can only imagine what it was like. So I can't imagine he had the support that he really and truly needed. So for the unexpecting eyes, he was just watching some casual TV without realizing the trauma that it could have inflicted on him.
And I think that's the case, isn't it? You just don't know. I think nowadays there would probably be some content warnings before the show went out, but I just feel like this is just a really unfortunate set of circumstances and just really, really sad that this happened off the back of it.
Yeah. So now we come on to the show Bite Back and the aftermath around the show. Now, there were a couple of failures on the evening the show aired, which may have amped up the panic. The amount of calls that came in after the show went out were enough to overload the switchboard, which meant many people couldn't get through. And this also prevented the pre-recorded message saying that the show was a drama from being played. The show's producers were expecting the show to be a bit of curiosity, but they didn't seem to quite realize just how scary this would be, particularly for children. Now, why would children be watching the show in the first place? Well, Sarah Green was kind of a big deal at the time on kids' TV, and so the choice to use her as a presenter for the show meant many children wanted to watch it, and the parents didn't supervise them whilst doing so, or just thought this was just going to be a little bit of nothing, a slightly spooky show, but instead it turned out to be one of the scariest horror movies ever made. Now, there was even a line built into the show which was delivered by Parky, which says that children should be in bed by then, and it was after Watershed, so it does seem there was some safeguarding built in before the real heavy stuff kicks off. Now, on to Bite Back. This was like Points of View, a TV show made for people to air their concerns and grievances with the BBC before there was social media comments. No Instagram, no X, and definitely no Facebook community pages. Ruth Baumgarten and Richard Broke, two of the show's producers, were taken to task by an angry but very civil audience because we're British after all. It seemed the main theme which cropped up across the whole segment was even though some people thought it was real, they thought it was too scary due to the blurring of lines between fact and fiction. Some people said using everyday presenters was too confusing, and they thought the producers set out intentionally to dupe the public. However, they refuted that statement by saying that they just set out to make a good drama, and in my opinion, they definitely succeeded because look at the results. The producers also made some very good points that they did put the show out after Watershed on purpose. So in case you're not sure what Watershed is, it's something TV broadcasters use as safeguarding to air things that are a bit more spicy than Antiques Roadshow or Songs of Praise or even Coronation Street. If it's past 9 p.m, that considers that kids should be in bed, and therefore if you're a parent allowing your child to watch these things after that point, then you're willing to suffer the consequences of your own actions. And it was 9:30 p.m. after all.
Yeah, it was 9:30, and I think that actually the BBC are very right in that assumption that if your kids are up past that point, and let's bear in mind that things don't really kick into the show until around about half an hour in as well. You get a couple of little spooks before then. You get Craig Charles jumping out of a cupboard in a werewolf mask.
Yeah.
But you know, I think before then, they kind of keep it quite PG, don't they? But then it really does start to amp up. So you've had plenty of time to get your kids in bed by 10 o'clock. And if your kids are up past 10 o'clock, then yeah, I kind of side with the BBC on this one. I think that's up to you. These really are, as you said, suffering the consequences of your own actions. They shouldn't be watching horror movies on Halloween night. I know that I would have been, but I can deal with it.
You're in a league of your own, Nikki Druce, because you are the queen of Halloween and you got away with murder as 11-year-old.
I definitely did.
On the other hand, there were other people in the audience who said they really enjoyed it. And even though they didn't know it wasn't real, they worked out pretty quickly that it was a drama, which kind of served to make others in the room look a bit stupid. However, the producers did apologise, but they'd stand up for what they'd made. But they'd admit that they did entirely underestimate just how popular the show would be.
Yeah, and I think that's the really important takeaway from this, isn't it? Those producers weren't expecting that show to be as big as it was. And I think having so many big names, you were appealing to so many different audiences. So you had the Michael Parkinson side of things, which should have been slightly older people.
Yeah.
Then you would have had the kids that came there for Sarah Green. They advertised it during the week on normal primetime telly as this thing that was going to happen. So people would have seen the adverts in advance and been excited to watch this. And then you've got Craig Charles, who was on a comedy program, Mike Smith, who also did a bit of TV, kids' TV stuff as well. And I just feel like they're really appealing to so many people that they got a much bigger audience than they were ever expecting.
For sure. And truly, you never know the sheer scale of things. And I think it's really cocky to be like, I know we're going to hit 10 million viewers with this show, because that's just sheer arrogance. I think having it like, look, we're making this brilliant piece of television. Let's see what happens.
And I think they did know that it was going to be big because it was BBC One. And BBC One at the time, that was the channel, wasn't it? It was the biggest place that you could broadcast. And
She's one of one. She's number one. She's
exactly.
the only one.
Yep. And so I feel like people would have really been watching that. But to get this many people watching, I really don't think they thought that was going to happen at all.
So after Ghostwatch aired and the controversy which erupted around it peaked, the BBC did their best to bury it. The show only ever aired once, and all the mentions of it were slowly eroded and lost to time. Soon, Ghostwatch became like a weird mythical event, but it seemed there was no record of it. This was until the internet really flickered into life. Bootleg copies of the show, which were recorded on VHS at the time, somehow started doing the rounds. Clips of the show was shared around, introducing it to a brand new generation of people who couldn't believe how amazing this was. With the passing of time and dust settling around the original outrage, people came to see Ghostwatch for what it was, an amazing piece of TV history. In a time before the found footage genre blew up with films like The Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity, Ghostwatch was forged in the fires of experimental television. The show went on to influence many found footage makers and has become a staple in any horror lover's DVD collection, as eventually the BBC relented a decade after the show aired and allowed it to be put on a collector's edition disc. So, why did this 90-minute program entirely manage to fool a nation? Well, just like believing in the paranormal, it required a certain amount of blind faith that the afterlife exists. Skeptics and believers watched the same show that evening and both left feeling unsettled whether they thought it was real or not. The dedication the show's creators and the BBC had in making sure this film went off without a hitch was impeccable. It was unpolished, rough around the edges, and emulated real life so convincingly that some people were never able to erase its horrors from their minds. Nowadays, in a world of constant media coverage and instant info living in our phones, it seems that the same spectacle couldn't be carried out, as we're now all sadly attuned to the fake news. But it has to be said that the creators of Ghostwatch trod a fine line in a period of time where they were able to use people's innocence to their advantage. The Enfield hauntings and the subsequent documentary made about the events made this all the more believable. It was something that had been seen before, and if it had happened once, what was to say it couldn't happen again? And to find out exactly what went on in the minds of those who made such a masterpiece, well, you'll want to tune in when we'll be chatting to the writer, Stephen Volk, and we cannot wait. And that, Divas, was the case of Ghostwatch 1992. Now, Nikki, how do you think that would fare in 2025?
Well, I feel like you couldn't really get away with it nowadays, could you? You're completely right. I think people are really attuned to spotting fake things because we've had to sadly become that way. And I think back in the day, people really trusted institutions and establishments like the BBC to not fool them. And I think They weren't expecting that at all. And so this was a big switcheroo. And I think it was one of the first points where people suddenly became a little bit suspicious of things that could go out in the in media and made them think, oh, actually, maybe I shouldn't be so trusting. So maybe Ghostwatch actually was a very good thing for that, because it made people think to actually check what they're consuming in terms of media.
Maybe I should check the radio times once again.
But how do you feel about this? Because you've sat and watched it the whole way through. So what did you think about it?
Well, I had a few highlights from it, and I think going into it, I could tell instantly, from the bad children acting to the mother always looking down the barrel of the camera like, it was hysterical for me because it is camp. It is high horror camp, and I just loved it. From referring to the cupboard under the stairs as the glory hole to the girl's scratches on the face, spoiler alert, going, fingernails? What fingernails? And pulling out the girl's stumpy fingers. God bless her. It was just fabulous. And Sarah Green being so spooked that she goes, I think we need a coffee. I think we need a coffee.
Yeah, the whole coffee making scene, I think, is one of the best bits, because if this was not real, why would they bother to leave that in? But it's because they want to make it seem so real. The sound man and the cameraman that are following Sarah around are actually a sound man and a cameraman. So they're not actors, and they wanted it to be as if it was a live broadcast and that's how they would act in those situations. So yeah, I think there's lots of things that are built into it, and I cannot wait, because I know that we're going to get all those juicy details from Stephen, and we're going to pick his brains, aren't we?
Yes, indeed. Coming up next time on Killers, Cults and Queens, we'll be chatting to the writer, Stephen Volk, and we cannot wait.
So make sure you join us next time to find out what went on.
If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. That's all for this episode, and we'll be back next Monday with a brand new case.
And we want to hear from you. We'll be discussing your thoughts and theories this Friday on the Spooky Sleepover bonus show. So pop us an email at killerscultsqueens@gmail.com. And if you've got any questions for Stephen, send them over.
Or you can DM us at Killers Cults Queens on Instagram, leave us a comment on Spotify or YouTube, or send us a message on Patreon, because we want to know exactly what you divas are thinking.
If you've been affected by any of the themes in this episode, please have a look at the description for lots of helpful resources.
Remember, you can watch our full-length video episodes on YouTube and join our exclusive community on Patreon at patreon.com/Killers Cults Queens.
See you next time, and don't be a killer or join a cult.
Just go bobbing for apples with Sarah Green. Goodbye.